My half-brother, angry over my support for his ex-wife, is now trying to keep me from my niece and nephew. After his cancer diagnosis, I reached out to offer help, but he's still petty and lashing out. The world isn't against you. I wrote in my letter. How low can he go? So, that is the main point, but there is so much more. He left his wife and children for a woman half his age around 2 years ago. He has been angry with me ever since for not supporting him following the separation. I have taken his ex-wife's side. I cannot bring myself to view the situation from his perspective. Thus, he turned against me. He is already proceeding with legal action regarding the divorce, child support, and visitation rights. He continuously petitions to remove me from the children's lives. He was just recently diagnosed with cancer, and I hope to see a change in him. I was prepared to reach out and offer my support, only to discover that he is still petitioning the court to prevent me from seeing my niece and nephew. I am very close to them, as well as my sister-in-law. He is doing this merely to hurt me. I have reason to believe he may either have borderline personality disorder or narcissistic personality disorder. I have composed a rather lengthy letter to make it clear to him that the entire world is not against him and to emphasize how serious his cancer diagnosis could be. Can someone review it to ensure it is not too triggering for someone like him? I felt compelled to contact you regarding something entirely different than what I had initially considered. These past few weeks, I have been seeing things in a new light due to your recent diagnosis. I wanted to reach out to you, setting aside all the negativity, to express my hopes for the best possible outcome for you. As I have stated before, I would never abandon you in a time of need, but that was based on my assumption that you would begin to see things differently due to your cancer diagnosis and perhaps even develop a bit of humility or step down from your high horse. Unfortunately, after hearing your latest outburst against those in your life who no longer enable you by telling you what you want to hear, it is clear that this has regrettably not happened to you. Therefore, I believe it is worthwhile to reach out and share a story about a recent traumatic event I experienced that you may find thought-provoking. I do not know if you have heard this, chances are you do not care, but in late June of 2024, my uncle died in hospice care in my grandparents' living room. He weighed around 85 pounds and looked like what he referred to as a victim of the Holocaust who did not make it out. It was a genuinely haunting experience to witness his decline and to ultimately see him pass away in just 4 short months after the discovery of his cancer in February 2024. As you know, my relationship with him was always tumultuous at best, but I was there for him until the end after his diagnosis. I was his caretaker, and for the first time in my life, I could also consider him a friend. No one else in the house could truly bear to look at him in his condition. He was so frail and weak, withering away, enduring intense physical pain, going through episodes of panic, and losing his ability to speak and walk. Eventually, his respiratory system began to shut down. He was on 6 liters of oxygen and still gasping for air. He was on 4 different types of morphine and still experiencing unimaginable pain. The most astonishing part of the entire situation? Immediately after he learned he had cancer, he completely altered his demeanor and how he treated people. He began apologizing profusely, becoming overly apologetic about even the slightest things, sometimes expressing frustration at me while I was trying to help him when he was in pain, verbalizing his frustrations in a slightly unkind manner. None of this compared to the bitterness he had displayed towards me in numerous situations throughout my life. I reassured him that I understood he was in pain, so he did not need to apologize. But the apologies continued to come, becoming more and more frequent, until he became entirely nonverbal a few days before his passing. Even then, I could see the remorse in his eyes. The last time I communicated with him while he was able to speak was on June 24, 2024. I had taken him to a palliative care appointment earlier that day. At that point, he was in a wheelchair and on oxygen 24 hours a day. Upon check-in, I noticed the palliative care doctor went to the back to make a phone call. Suddenly, his oncologist and assistant entered the office with us, where they informed him that they could not proceed with treatment. He was not ready to die, he wanted a second opinion. I attempted to get him an appointment with Stanford Oncology, but I encountered the issue that once he entered hospice, the insurance would only cover hospice care. I could not believe that any medical provider could suggest that insurance payments must be in order before attempting to save someone's life. I spent my whole life under the impression that this was illegal, but it turns out it happens. I wish I could have done more, but after I tucked him into bed that night, I truly believe his soul left his body then. He remained alive for 2 more days but never regained consciousness or provided any indication that his body was anything more than a shell he had already vacated. I continued to care for him until the moment he stopped breathing. After he passed, I finally had time to process everything, as it all happened so quickly. I began reflecting on all the genuine apologies I had recently received from him and recognized how sincere they truly were, I had merely perceived them as the apologies I had never received from him throughout my life. As I came to this realization, have you ever seen The Rain by Creedence Clearwater Revival began playing on the radio in my car? That was his favorite band, and one of the songs he would frequently sing and play harmonica to, always tapping his foot a beat behind. I, of course, was overwhelmed with a wave of peace in that moment, accompanied by lots of tears. I then spoke to him, hoping he could hear me. I reassured him that Grandma would be okay, told him I forgave him, and apologized for all the times my anger got the better of me after disagreements with him. I expressed my wish that things had been different, but I was genuinely happy we ended on good terms and that I had the opportunity to go on all those casino trips with him after he fell ill. Things concluded in the best possible way given the situation, but another difficult aspect of the entire experience was that he was not ready to go. He had just turned 60 the month he was diagnosed and, prior to that, still seemed to have a lot of life ahead of him. He was still working during the week, fishing on the weekends, and was willing to quit drinking entirely when he became ill. He was determined to give it up for good if it could save his life, but it ultimately turned out to be too late. Following his decision to stop drinking, many personal issues he had been using alcohol to suppress re-emerged. He truly appeared to feel emotions and remorse, a trait I had rarely seen him demonstrate throughout my life. This has left me feeling his absence much more acutely than I anticipated. I miss him greatly. I do not know if I will feel the same way about you if your health does not improve and, God forbid, your cancer becomes your downfall. It sounds harsh, but I do not see that you are learning any lessons from your situation as you should. I sincerely believe that events like this occur for a reason in people's lives at times when all other lessons and opportunities for growth have been overshadowed by your egotistical sense of self. I am no angel, I am not perfect. However, I treat people as they deserve to be treated. I can accept criticism and do not try to control everything around me out of selfishness and spite. It seems that your interpretation of me speaking negatively about you to your children is nothing more than a discussion of the truth, as they know it, as you should know it, but refuse to acknowledge. If you cannot accept the reality you created and view it as telling the children things they should not hear, you are forgetting they were present, they experienced it. The majority of the worry and fear they felt was a direct result of your actions. While you were preoccupied with your own concerns, they were left uncertain about when they would see you again. Everyone makes mistakes, and it is clear you are trying to make amends now. However, when you point a finger, 3 are pointing back at you. With all the blame you are casting, it is very challenging not to examine the mistakes you are making. Therefore, I advise you to use this time to concentrate on your health and well-being and make the most of the time you have left, as cancer can take that away in a relatively short period, just as I have recounted to you. Do you want people to remember you fondly, or would you prefer to be remembered as the individual who caused so many problems in his family's lives while continuing to speak unfavorably about them and acting as if your feelings are hurt? You hurt your ex-wife and children profoundly, yet you still play the victim while continuously creating issues and disparaging others around your children, all the while accusing others of doing the same. You would benefit from keeping your opinions about others to yourself, as the opinions of you do not reflect well at this point. When you depart, you should leave the best parts of yourself behind for those who remain to piece together what is left. The true victims here are your children, not you. It will never be about you again now that you have children. I suppose no one told you that. Regarding your opinions of me, you do not know anything about my life. Even when you were part of it, you were too consumed by your own to pay attention. Therefore, my alleged downward spiral is merely another excuse you use to feel and appear better by projecting negativity onto others. A downward spiral should be sufficient reason to reach out to a friend or loved one, with all negativity aside. You know perfectly well that this is untrue, and it is merely something you say to enhance the court's perception of you. Well, understand this. Narcissistic language is easily recognized by judges. They encounter your type throughout their careers. The only fault you acknowledge is one incident of domestic violence. You seem to forget the incident in 2009 when you lied to my mother and me, claiming she left because she was upset about not being able to go to work with you. You refused to provide us with her phone number and omitted significant details out of fear that she would reveal the truth about what had happened. You were more concerned about preserving your image than the fact that you hurt and terrified her or left her without anyone to turn to after she escaped the hell you created for her. Your only goal was to protect your reputation. It is not your fault if you may have narcissistic personality disorder. To be honest, that is not surprising, you probably inherited it from your mother. However, it is your responsibility to acknowledge it and seek help instead of using it as a weapon against those who have loved, cared for, and supported you throughout your life. You held your friends in high regard, but once they stopped telling you what you wanted to hear, they became useless to you in sustaining your image. It is amusing, from what I can tell, most of your friends were quite genuine and loyal, yet you pretended to be sincere with them while eagerly gossiping about them after any social gathering. That is the definition of two-faced and a clear example of how you tend to utilize people in your life more as tools in your game than as friends. The way you perceive your personal image is a delusion you struggle to maintain to avoid confronting reality. You are now losing your grip, which has caused you to panic and lash out more defensively. If anyone is experiencing a downward spiral in their lives, it is undoubtedly you. I hope you read this, and before responding with anger, truly comprehend what I am trying to convey to you. If I did not care about you, I would not invest all this time and energy into writing this letter to you. I genuinely do not care how you feel about me, but after you recently referred to me as a bully, I felt compelled to encourage you to understand that all the people you have been alienating and disparaging are not the adversaries you perceive them to be. I sincerely wish the best for you and hope you ultimately find that best without harboring so much hatred in your heart. Life is fleeting, and when your own mortality approaches, the harsh light of reality, though difficult for some, becomes evident. At this point, it may be too late to amend your wrongs. I have omitted names for privacy. The first referenced name is my late uncle, and the second is my half-brother's ex-wife. Let me know what you think. Story 2. My forgetfulness is straining my relationship with my girlfriend, who said, "I feel like I prioritize you," and then get blown off. Despite my efforts, I still miss key moments. With graduation approaching and long distance looming, will I lose her for good? I began dating her more than a year ago, and I love her deeply. I hope that after we graduate, we will be able to move in together. It does not appear that same-sex marriage will become legal here in the near future. For context, this illustrates how serious our relationship is. However, there is a recurring issue that leads to arguments, which involves my planning activities that do not materialize because I forget about another event or task that coincides with the timings, and I realize this almost at the last minute. It is completely understandable that she feels upset whenever this occurs. My home is at least a 45-minute commute from hers, often about an hour. Although we attend the same university, we are enrolled in different departments, and the campus is quite large, so we typically only see each other during our lunch breaks, provided we have time during those breaks. We do not have much time for dates due to all of this and the demands of our studies, so one plan falling through significantly affects us both. I have been forgetful since childhood, and I do everything I can to combat this tendency. I set alarms on my phone, I journal, and I make plans. Despite my efforts, I eventually make mistakes. We have designated a specific time 10:30 p.m. every night where we aim to put everything aside and talk to one another via text or phone call. The way this routine developed is somewhat sad. I spent a semester in the United Kingdom as part of an exchange program when we established that timing, so for me, it was 5 p.m. upon my return to India. I had assumed that we were no longer maintaining fixed timings since we could meet in person again, so I became more relaxed about it, not realizing that she continued to text me every evening at 10:30. I missed a few nights, which upset her, and it made me aware of the situation. Even after that, I forgot a few times. I then set an alarm for 10:30, which made it easier, but when she discovered the alarm, it did not have the effect I anticipated. Instead of feeling as if I was making an effort, it gave her the impression that I viewed it as a burden. It truly is not. I love our conversations. The most recent argument unfolded like previous ones. I planned to meet her on a Thursday, and it did not seem like anything would interfere. On Tuesday, my dog was limping, and none of us had seen her fall. I called the clinic on Wednesday but discovered it was closed that day. Therefore, we would have to go the following day. I was aware of this, and I also knew I was meeting her, yet somehow I failed to connect the dots that I could not manage both on the same day. I remembered this around midnight while texting her, and she was understandably upset. Each time I make a mistake, it amplifies the previous issues I have caused. She mentioned that she would tell her friends, who she had previously declined, to buy tickets for a movie, and she canceled her attendance at an upcoming event we both wanted to go to. The next day, I was so saddened that I could hardly get out of bed. The entire day at college went by somehow, and in the evening, I texted her that I did not feel like talking because I wondered how I could cheer someone up when I felt terrible. One of the things she replied was, "If it helps, I am not mad anymore," so I engaged in conversation, but then I asked whether she was certain that she was no longer upset because I had a feeling she still was. She said, "I feel like I prioritize you all the time and then get disregarded as if it is nothing." I became defensive in response, which I should not have done, but I had spent the entire day feeling miserable and stressed about everything, and I thought she was being unfair in portraying me as unfeeling. Ultimately, she concluded that the worst part of all this is that it ultimately is not my fault. I had tried, but she still ends up hurt every time. What troubles me is the lack of a definitive conclusion to this situation. The next time I inevitably make a mistake, she will remember every single instance I have done this previously, and it will continue to accumulate. She once mentioned that maybe she would not have given me as much priority if she had her old friend group, from before her move to my city, as she is an extrovert and her current circle of friends is rather inadequate. I did not know how to feel about that. It kind of hurt, to be honest, realizing that I was supposed to serve as a substitute for her lack of socializing. What bothers me significantly about this time is that, although we met the following day, on Friday, and had good quality time together, the joy of seeing her did not seem to outweigh the anxiety and guilt I experienced the day before. I worry that I will fall out of love with her. She truly is a caring and sweet girlfriend, and I do not want that to happen. I will be graduating in a few months and will move out of state to pursue a 2-year master's degree while she completes the remaining 2 years of her program. I had a 3-year bachelor's degree, and she has a 4-year one. This means 2 years of long distance. How will I manage? To summarize, my poor time management often leads me to cancel plans, which makes my girlfriend upset. I need to find a way to break this cycle.